The word monument derives from the Latin word "monere", meaning simultaneously to remind and to warn. A powerful sentiment that not only does memorialization seek to remind us of past events and characters, but to inform new generations of the faults and successes of those who came before them. As the famous quote goes, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Memorializations of the Holocaust are plentiful. Statues, exhibitions, novels, books, documentaries, the list goes on. Indeed, by the time they emerged as a distinct genre around 1960, Holocaust memorials used a new repertoire of symbols, forms, and materials to convey their interpretation of the events. Many memorials depicted human forms and positions of mourning, solidarity, or resistance, as they are universally understandable and are able to trigger empathy and positive feelings while connoting negative events. For example, the Holocaust Memorial in the Miami Beach Botanical Gardens, unveiled in 1985, materialized as a large hand outstretched upwards, its arm carved with the desperate bodies of victims scrambling for the freedom of the sky. It is a chilling yet undoubtedly thought-provoking piece, which many older Holocaust memorials align themselves with. It is understandable that memorials and representations of the Holocaust typically take on a traditional style of remembrance, firstly because it is considered respectful to honor the many victims who perished while acknowledging the scale and severity of the tragedy, but also because from a 21st century point of view, the individuals who survived the Holocaust, who informed the creation of these now well-established memorials, are from a much older generation and are likely to utilize familiar and more traditional stylistic choices to convey their message, which does not necessarily appeal to younger generations. The question then arises, how do we engage young people with remembering the Holocaust and understanding what it was, what it meant, how many people died, and how many individuals, families, and communities were eradicated? One answer comes in the form of Jane Corman's Dancing Auschwitz, a near 5.5-minute video in which a survivor, Adalek Khan, dances with his children and grandchildren to a cover of Gloria Gaynor's infamous I Will Survive across some of Europe's most notable Holocaust remembrance sites, namely the camps at Auschwitz, Dachau, and Theresienstadt. Despite its origins coming from a dark and incomprehensible tragedy, Jane Corman on her website claimed that she endeavored to capture the poignancy of the past, the uncertainty of the present, and a hope for a more tolerant future through lively and seemingly unchoreographed dancing, shared on a platform where both young and old can access the message the family wished to project. Expressing the joy of survival is not an uncommon theme in Holocaust film and literature today, not as uncommon as it was in earlier depictions and memorials. In Polanski's 2002 film The Pianist, for example, it concludes with the protagonist, Spielmann, once again enjoying his life and smiling to himself as he performs Chopin's Grand Polonaise Brillante to a large audience, suggesting that he is rejoicing in life again through music, which remained a constant theme of resilience and beauty throughout a film that simultaneously demonstrated the horrors of the Holocaust and the horrors of war. For Polanski, this film was informed by personal experience, as he himself had escaped the ghettos at the age of 6. In fact, screenwriter Ronald Harwood spoke of his experience on the set of the film, stating that despite the subject matter, him and Polanski laughed a lot, making dreadful jokes about Jews, Poles, and Germans, as it was the only way to get through filming, which was a statement that soured some opinions towards Polanski by Holocaust survivors, but also demonstrated the use of humor to deal with very difficult emotions for survivors. Although not specifically a Holocaust film, in the 2019 film Jojo Rabbit, Rosie Betzler tells her son that life is a gift. We must celebrate it. We have to dance to show God we are grateful to be alive. Dancing is for people who are free. Although she does not survive the war, unfortunately, her son and a Jewish girl who hid in the family home dance as the film concludes, as if to say, I have survived. However, neither of these depictions of joyful survival have generated as much controversy as Coleman's Dancing Auschwitz when it was first released to YouTube in 2010. Due to each survivor carrying their own memories, trauma, and personal opinions about representation, the absence of commonly accepted definitions of the Holocaust and the lack of consensus about appropriate rituals and symbols for its victims have in turn provided additional ground for volatile confrontations. It is the opinion of many scholars and victims alike that the short film trivializes the world's greatest tragedy and undermines the cultural awareness achieved by more traditional remembrances. However, as mentioned previously, reverting back to traditional memorialization methods often fails to engage young people and new generations with keeping Holocaust remembrance alive. So we have to ask, how much good is it really doing? While the project was formed in 3 parts, the I Will Survive video itself, as well as old family footage and the documentary of how the main crux of the project was put together, primary focus and scholarly debate centered on the dancing itself, as well as the choice of music, in an ebook compiled by Coleman herself of email responses, both supportive and unsupportive towards Dancing Auschwitz. Viewers freely expressed their opinions on the controversy, with some leaving little room for compromise. In an email from Otto Waldman from Sydney, he writes, "You are unable to make the distinction between offending others and expressing yourself. While I would be elated that your grandfather has escaped the horrors of the camp, over 100 of my own family did not. One does not celebrate that one has managed to make it while knowing that millions more ended up in the gas chambers. This is echoed by many others, each with their own level of anger or frustration at this form of remembrance, some with valid criticism, some who lash out with harsh and offensive language, and others who seek only to preach their anti-Semitism. While it is the right of those like Otto Waldman to express their dismay at survivors who rejoice in their life while there are millions of men, women and children who are unable to, it is also the right of the Kohn family to express their feelings publicly and commemorate their experience in a manner that they believe will benefit Holocaust remembrance in future generations. With regard to the song choice of Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive, it appears to be an odd decision at first. As the video begins, the upbeat nature of the song is incongruous with the settings in which it overplays, where the expectation is to act with somberness and in quiet remembrance. However, the song is a timeless classic that spans generations of listeners, is instantly recognizable, and projects a universal statement of survival and perseverance. In the introduction of her email response compilation book, Jane states that Dancing Auschwitz was driven by my desire to create a fresh response to the Holocaust. I felt that people, especially the young, were becoming desensitized to both its story and its images. Honing in on this idea of modern remembrance and engagement with new forms of media presence. Certainly, in response to the popularity and controversy sparked by the Dancing Auschwitz video, many scholars commented on the importance of sites such as YouTube in particular for continuing Holocaust memorialization. It has been the opinion of many scholars that the employment of visuals, both static photographs and moving pictures, is an absolutely integral practice in the representation and interpretation of the Second World War. Almost none of them are as influential as the ones related to the representation of war atrocities, in particular the Holocaust. Another aspect of the project which has sadly often been overlooked is the website itself and the documentary of how the project was created. While it is the assumption of many who directed criticism at the film that the family simply arrived at these locations, danced, left, with smiles on their faces, that is not the full story. Pictures on the website depict Adalek Khan saying Kaddish for the victims before they began dancing, and in the documentary his grandchildren are shown engaging more solemnly with the reality of the atrocities. They also support their grandfather with love and affection, and he proclaims, "If someone would tell me here then that I would come 60-something 3 years later with my grandchildren, so I'd say, what you talking about?" So here you are, this is a really historical moment. When processing these statements and clips in isolation from the main video, the silence is overwhelming and the core message of the project takes on a less controversial tone. While having his grandchildren around him during his return to Auschwitz and other such places demonstrates their support for their grandfather, it also further demonstrates the strength of family connection and that young people can engage with Holocaust memorialization alongside those of older generations in new and interesting ways. To conclude, Dancing Auschwitz is an incredibly moving piece, regardless of whether the viewer likes or dislikes the delivery of its message. Not unlike other examples of Holocaust memorials or depictions, the project sought to encourage hope, peace, and perseverance. It is a testament to the strength of those who continue to live after the atrocities that happened, but in alignment with the thoughts of those who praise the project, not with the intention of mocking or laughing over the graves of those who did not survive.